The village of Marrowmere lay tucked in a hollow valley, surrounded by a ring of whispering pines that seemed to hum with secrets. The people there lived simple lives, bakers, cobblers, weavers, and dreamers, each rising with the golden dawn that spilled over the hills like warm honey. But lately, something had changed. The laughter that once filled the cobblestone lanes had softened into uneasy murmurs. It wasn't sickness or famine that had taken hold, it was worry. A heavy kind that crept into hearts, quiet but constant, like fog refusing to lift. In a cottage at the far edge of the village lived a witch named Elara. Unlike the tales that warn children of crooked-nosed witches and wicked potions, Elara was gentle, her eyes kind and her heart tuned to the quiet rhythm of the world. She grew lavender by her window and brewed teas that could ease sleepless minds. The villagers, though wary at first, came to her for small comforts, herbal sachets for restless nights, salves for aching joints, or simply a listening ear when the world felt too heavy. She never took payment, only smiles and whispered thanks, yet even Elara could feel it, that creeping unease settling over Marrowmere. It drifted in like an invisible mist, pressing against the windows and weighing down her thoughts. One morning, as she stirred honey into her tea, she noticed a withered bluebell on her windowsill. "Even the flowers are tired," she murmured softly, brushing its petals with care. She could sense something stirring in the air, something old and restless. That night, unable to sleep, she lit a single candle and opened her mother's spellbook, a leather-bound tome filled with words she'd never dared to read aloud. By the flickering light, Elara found a page she had never seen before, one inked in shimmering silver script. The spell was titled The Binding of Worries. It promised to draw the burdens of the heart into a single vessel and release peace in its place. The magic hummed faintly as she traced the letters with trembling fingers. It felt ancient, and powerful, and perhaps, dangerous. Still, her heart whispered that this might be what her village needed. A spell to carry their worries, she whispered. What harm could come from that? The next morning, Elara gathered her cloak and stepped out into the misty dawn. She followed the winding path toward the forest, where she would seek the ingredients the spell required: dewdrops from moonlit petals, the sigh of a sleeping willow, and a pinch of silver dust from the roots of the oldest oak. As the fog curled around her feet, the world felt quieter than ever before. But deep within the woods, something stirred, a faint whisper, like a sigh carried on the wind. And though she did not yet know it, Elara's choice to read that page had awakened something that had long been waiting to be remembered. The forest beyond Marrowmere had always felt alive to Elara. Every rustling leaf and fluttering bird seemed to hold a language of its own. But as she stepped beneath the towering pines that morning, the air carried a new kind of stillness. The usual hum of bees and chirp of sparrows had faded into silence, replaced by a low, rhythmic whisper, like wind breathing through hollow wood. She paused at the edge of the path, tightening her cloak. "It's only the wind," she murmured, though the words felt more like a wish than a truth. She began her search for the spell's ingredients. The first was easy enough: dewdrops from moonlit petals. Though the moon had vanished with dawn, Elara knew where to find the white starflowers that held the night's last light within them. She cupped them gently, collecting the shimmering drops into a small glass vial. Each droplet glowed faintly, reflecting the forest around her like tiny stars. The beauty of it steadied her heart, but the whispering continued, soft and distant, always just behind her, like someone speaking her name but never quite finishing it. Next came the sigh of a sleeping willow. Deep within the forest stood a clearing where an ancient willow grew, its branches draping like a green curtain over a crystal pool. Elara knelt beside it, pressing her ear to the trunk, waiting for the faint breath of magic that marked the tree's dreaming. When it came, a soft, trembling exhale, it rippled through the leaves like a lullaby. She caught it in a small charm bottle, feeling the warmth pulse through her palm. But as she turned to leave, the reflection in the water shifted. For a heartbeat, it wasn't her face staring back, it was another woman's, older, eyes filled with sadness, mouthing words Elara couldn't hear. Startled, she stumbled back, the vial clutched tightly in her fist. The whispering had stopped now, but the silence was worse. Even the air felt heavier, thicker, as though the forest was watching. She took a steadying breath and pressed on toward the heart of the woods, the place where the oldest oak grew. Its roots were said to reach deep enough to touch the bones of the world, and it was there she needed to find the final ingredient, silver dust from its roots. Her mother had once told her never to disturb that tree. Old magic sleeps there, she'd said. And old magic does not like to be woken. When Alara finally reached the clearing, twilight had already begun to fall. The oak loomed ahead, enormous and ancient, its bark etched with swirling symbols no human hand could have carved. Kneeling at its base, she dug gently with her fingers until she uncovered a faint shimmer of silver dust clinging to the roots like frost. As she gathered it into a pouch, the ground seemed to sigh, a deep, mournful sound that echoed in her bones. Then came the whisper again, clearer this time, carrying through the wind like a voice almost human. If you take, you must give back. Alara froze. The words trembled through her, but when she looked up, the forest was empty. The oak stood silent, the world still. She closed the pouch, heart pounding, and whispered a promise to return what she'd borrowed, but somewhere deep beneath the earth, something ancient had already begun to stir. That night, Marrowmere slept beneath a veil of silver fog. The moon, pale and watchful, hung above the valley like an unblinking eye. In her cottage, Alara prepared the ingredients with trembling hands. On her wooden table lay the three gathered treasures, the vial of dewdrops, the sigh of the willow, and the pouch of silver dust. Each pulsed faintly with its own rhythm, as if alive. She set them in a circle, lit a single white candle, and whispered to herself, for peace, not power. For comfort, not control. But deep inside, her heart fluttered with unease. The whisper from the oak still echoed in her mind, if you take, you must give back. The spell began softly. Alara's voice carried through the cottage like a lullaby, ancient words flowing from her lips without thought. The candlelight brightened, swirling upward into a spiral of pale smoke. The dewdrops lifted first, glittering like stars in the air, followed by the willow's sigh that breathed through the room, making the curtains sway. When she scattered the silver dust, it fell not to the table but into the spiral of light, binding the ingredients together in a slow, luminous dance. The air felt charged, heavy yet peaceful, as if the world itself was listening. And when the last word left her lips, the smoke collapsed inward, vanishing into the hollow of her palm, leaving behind a small, glowing charm. It pulsed faintly, warm and comforting, like the heartbeat of something newly born. At dawn, Alara walked through the village, quietly hanging the charm in the square by the old well. It shimmered gently in the morning light, its glow so subtle most would have missed it if not for the strange calm that followed. The cobbler's wife, who had not slept for nights, found herself smiling at nothing. The baker, once too anxious to leave his shop, hummed a tune as he kneaded dough. Even the children seemed lighter, their laughter ringing through the air like bells. Alara felt relief bloom in her chest. The spell was working. The worries had begun to fade, but by evening, the charm's glow had dimmed, and something else had begun to stir. That night, a farmer named Hal knocked on Alara's door. His voice trembled as he spoke, "The dreams, Alara, they're strange. I see shadows whispering my name." She comforted him with tea and calm words, but as he left, she noticed faint gray smudges under his eyes, like soot, or ash. And when she looked out at the village square, she thought she saw the charm flicker once, like a dying ember. The air grew heavy again, but not with worry, something deeper, colder. When Alara finally went to bed, she dreamt she was standing beneath the great oak. Its roots were writhing like serpents, and from the darkness beneath them came the voice again, whispering her name, slow, drawn out, and filled with sorrow. Alara, if you take their worries, where do you think they go? The days that followed were filled with beauty and sorrow in equal measure. The prince and Marina grew closer, bound by quiet companionship and unspoken emotions. He admired her kindness, her gentleness, the way she seemed to understand his soul without ever speaking a word. Yet, in the shadows of her joy, Marina felt the slow ache of despair. The sea witch's warning haunted her: if the prince did not love her truly, if he did not kiss her before the full moon, she would belong to the sea forever. Each night she watched the moon rise higher, its pale light like a silent clock counting down her heartbeat. Stood on the eve of the full moon, the palace was alive with music and light. The prince was to announce his engagement, to the princess of a neighboring kingdom. Marina's heart shattered when she saw the young woman enter, kind, radiant, her voice clear as sunlight. And when she sang, the melody was hauntingly familiar, the same song Marina had sung to save him on that stormy night. The truth struck like lightning: the sea witch's spell had twisted fate. The prince believed this new princess was his savior, the voice that called him back from the depths. Marina stood frozen, silent, watching as the man she loved took another's hand. That night, when the celebration faded and the moon climbed to its highest, Marina slipped away to the shore. The waves lapped gently against her feet, whispering her name. Her sisters appeared, their faces pale and tearful, their hair flowing like mourning veils. "We found her," one said, holding out a blade carved from a sea serpent's tooth. "The sea witch gave us this, a way to save you. If you take the prince's life before sunrise, his blood will break the spell, and you will return to the sea." Marina took the dagger, her trembling hands reflected in the moonlight. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a living heart. She crept into the prince's chamber, where he slept beside his bride-to-be. The moonlight traced the lines of his face, peaceful, unguarded, and full of dreams. Marina raised the blade, her heart a storm of love and agony. But as tears spilled down her cheeks, she knew she could not do it. To save herself by destroying the one she loved would make her no better than the darkness she had fled. Gently, she kissed his forehead, a silent farewell, and turned toward the open sea. As dawn broke, she ran to the edge of the cliffs and leapt, her body dissolving into foam as the first rays of sunlight touched her. But the story did not end in death. As her body became one with the sea, a warm, golden light enveloped her. The pain faded, replaced by a feeling of boundless peace. Voices, soft and melodic, surrounded her, the spirits of the wind and waves. "You have done a selfless thing," they whispered. "Your love has freed you." Marina looked down to find her form changed, no longer mermaid or human, but something lighter, brighter. She rose into the morning sky, a spirit of the sea breeze, watching as the prince awoke and gazed toward the horizon. A gentle wind brushed his cheek, carrying her final whisper, "Remember the sea." And though he never knew why, he smiled, feeling that somewhere out there, love still watched over him, eternal as the tide. When morning broke over Marrowmere, the fog had lifted. The first rays of sunlight painted the rooftops in gold, and birds sang again for the first time in many days. The villagers awoke feeling different. Some wept for no reason they could name. Others laughed, overwhelmed by a strange rush of emotion they hadn't felt in weeks. They remembered their worries, the small aches of life, the fears, the sorrows, but instead of despair, they felt something softer. Relief. Wholeness. As if each worry, returned to them, had been washed clean by moonlight. Ilara watched from the well's edge, her hands trembling around the broken pieces of the charm. She felt hollow yet alive, her heart heavy with the weight she had taken back. The spell's burden lingered within her, she could feel the villagers' worries beating beneath her skin, whispering at the edges of her thoughts. But where there had once been dread, now there was understanding. "Worries," she whispered, "are part of being human. They remind us we care." She placed the shards gently on the stone rim, letting the morning light catch them. For a moment, they shimmered faintly, like stars bidding farewell to dawn. As the days passed, Marrowmere slowly returned to itself. The baker sang again, though his hand sometimes shook when he kneaded dough. The cobbler's wife wept over her tea, then smiled through her tears. Children ran through the fields, arguing and laughing and dreaming. They had not lost their fears, but they had found balance. Life had rhythm again, worry and hope, sadness and joy, all weaving together as they were meant to. The villagers still spoke kindly of the witch on the hill, who had once lifted their burdens with a single charm. But none knew the cost she had paid, or where she had gone, for Alara had left Marrowmere quietly one dawn, following the forest path until the trees swallowed her silhouette. Some said she sought the oak again to return what magic had taken. Others whispered she became one with the woods, tending to lost worries and forgotten dreams. In truth, she built a small cottage deep in the forest's heart, where the wind whispered through her garden and the night sky shone clear. There, she brewed tea for travelers who wandered in burden and left lighter, though she never spoke of spells again. Sometimes, when the moon is full and silver light floods the valley, villagers say they hear her song carried on the breeze, gentle, kind, and full of love. It's said that if you listen closely, the wind itself seems to whisper her promise. Peace is not the absence of worry, but the courage to hold it with love. And under the starlit sky, the valley sleeps, restless, imperfect, and beautifully alive.